Hi, my darlings, I'm Sophie Darling, and welcome back to the channel. If you love anime, heartfelt reactions, and deep dives into symbolism and themes, then you're in the right place. Before we jump into today's reaction, don't forget to hit that like button to show some love, subscribe if you haven't already, and please do ring that notification bell so you never miss a moment of fun. If you want even more exclusive content like early access to my reactions, full-length anime watch-alongs, and an amazing community of fellow anime lovers, check out my Patreon. You can find it in the description box below. Your support truly means the world as it helps to keep these reactions coming, and I'd love to have you join our cozy little anime family. If you notice I look a little different to my react, it's because I'm refilming the intro and outro. Unfortunately, we have had some technical issues. My noise gate has cut me off in places. I have replaced the missing words with subtitles. It's far from ideal, but I have since fixed the issue. I unfortunately did not pick this up until editing. I'm still not 100% sure what has caused the problem, but I have tried to fix it the best that I can. So I ask you to please be patient and to bear with it. I only had two options, which was either I don't post the reacts at all, which I feel would be a complete shame because even though the audio is a bit scuffed, it is still a good react, or to replace parts of the missing audio with subtitles on screen. So I have made do with a really bad situation. I know it's far from ideal, and thankfully we have fixed the problem now for future recordings, but just for these next few recordings, please bear with me, please be patient. Again, I sincerely apologize and enjoy the react. Today, we are reacting to episode 12 of series 3 of Attack on Titan. Episode 11 was a long one. Episode 12, I have a feeling, is also going to be a long one, primarily because I believe that this is the end of the first arc of series 3. That's kind of what I've been warned about, and that there's a credit scene that I need to watch. There was some controversy about whether I should watch the end credit. A lot of people told me that I shouldn't watch it because I'm too perceptive and that it would spoil things for me, and others disagreed. But the compromise that I've come to, because quite frankly, I'm not going to please everyone. If I don't watch the post-credit scene, I'm going to have people be annoyed. If I do watch it, I'm going to have people annoyed. Frankly, I am very curious to see it, and if it does lessen the impact of future scenes. The compromise we've come to is that I am not allowed to rewatch it. I'm allowed to watch it once, one single time, and I'm not allowed to go back, and I'm not allowed to pause, and I'm not allowed to rewatch it a second time. We watch it once, and I try and learn what I can from that one viewing. And if I don't learn anything from it, then that's it. I'm not allowed to watch it again. So this is the end of the arc for series 3, and I have mentioned in episode 11 that I have made a timeline. So we are going to be delving into my timeline, and I am going to be showing you where my head is at, where I think the story is going, the theories that I've kind of gathered from having epiphany moments from series 1 and series 2. Again, whenever I have a shower, I'm thinking about Attack on Titan, and things come back to me that I completely forgot about, and that shifts my focus. So I've been trying to write everything down so I can just try and keep track of everything. We're going to delve into it, and it's probably going to be a long outro, but I think you guys are going to enjoy the timeline and kind of seeing where my head is at, and also that I am a mad theory conspiracy woman at this point. Attack on Titan has completely consumed my mind. I don't care. It's a phenomenal show. I'm happy that it's consumed my mind, but that just means we have super long outros, especially the more information we learn, the longer the outros tend to be. But we're going to delve into more in the post episode discussion, so please do stick around for that. I know that they're long, but trust me, there's so much with this show that I feel like if you don't have a long discussion at the end of the react, did you actually watch the show and did you actually engage with it? Because I don't understand how people can watch this and just go, that was cool, see you next episode. There's so much to this. It's become quite standard in the React community to have very short episodes and just a react and a very short intro and very short outro. And I think that's to kind of maximize viewer retention for the algorithm so that your videos get boosted. But I think it does a disservice to React content because it's not engaging with the media. It is essentially just you watching the show, but you're not actually contributing a discussion or anything new. Of course, there are reactors that do engage with the media, and I want to kind of give three of them a shout out because I have been watching their earlier Attack on Titan videos, and it has been phenomenal to watch their journey. And the three big reactors that I think are absolutely phenomenal in terms of analysis and engagement would be Film Buff, Autosave, and Stories with Style. There are probably more, but I haven't discovered them as of yet, and that's fine. I'm only one person. But those are the three that I would say really inspire me to continue to do long deep dives and to continue to do analysis into these shows and to not kind of be put off by following the meta, which is short in order to maximize views rather than genuinely engaging. And I'm going to be personal here, and I know not everyone's going to agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. There is react content for everyone, and some people won't like my reacts because I'm not a hype reactor. I'm not somebody that screams or overreacts. I do get emotionally invested and I cry quite a lot. So I'm not by any means being hype reactors. They do have a role in this space. People enjoy that. I just feel that with how mainstream hype reactions have become, people forget what it actually means to react and engage. They forget that the reaction is only a small portion and it's not actually transformative if you're not having a discussion about the show, if you're not engaging with the media in an insightful and interesting way. And I think for me, that always sits a bit weird. I don't quite agree that it's worthy react content if you're not engaging. But then again, people might think my long discussions are not necessary, and that's fine. I just feel that when you have something as beautifully written and portrayed as Attack on Titan, it is a disservice to Asayama and his writing to not engage with what you're watching and to not theorize and to not question and to not look at the themes and to just kind of shrug it off and to sum up what you've watched in less than 5 minutes feels almost like an insult to me. Like, I just don't feel like 5 minutes is enough to discuss everything. I don't think it is. And I know there's probably people in the comment section are going to be like, you're just bitter because you don't do as well as the hype reactors, and that's fine. I'm not a hype reactor, so I don't compare myself to hype reactors. Somebody else doing well doesn't take away from my own success. But I would say that yes, my channel doesn't do as well as hype reactions, but that's because it's not the same niche. My channel appeals to people that genuinely want reactors to engage and analyze and theorize and look at the depth of the story writing and the storytelling. And unfortunately, in this day and age, with people's attention span getting shorter, it is a small niche, but it is a niche nonetheless that I am passionate about. And my videos will never be short for the sake of an algorithm or for the sake of my videos as long as they need to be, because unless I'm satisfied that I have discussed everything I want to discuss, I'm not going to be happy with the content I produce. I enjoy doing this type of content. I enjoy having these conversations. Different content for different folks, but I feel that potentially all react content gets lumped into hype reactions because there's so many of them and it's such a big field that people who aren't hype reactors kind of get overlooked because their videos are longer and that they don't necessarily fall into the meta, because it is a very popular metric to be a hype reactor. It is the popular route to go. It's just not one that I could ever do. I just know I'm going to get shit for that. I just kind of wanted to give my personal opinion on React content just because I hear people say all the time, like, React content's lazy, it's not transformative, and you don't do anything, you don't actually contribute anything. And that's because of the meta of hype reactors. They're just there to kind of scream and overreact because it's entertaining. And that's okay because it's entertaining to people. But arguably, it is not transformative. And that's why people kind of have a negative view of React content. They presume that everyone who does React content is the same, that they don't actually pay attention to what they're watching, that they don't actually discuss it, and that they don't actually care about what they're consuming. But we know that's not true because we know that there are reactors in this that take these series seriously and that give it the time and effort and space that it deserves. Alas, that is not always the case, but yeah, I just feel that sometimes analytical approaches get overlooked more than hype content does, and just personally, I find that quite sad in this day and age that like more analytical approaches are not appreciated as much. It doesn't feel right. It feels insulting to the writing, to the storytelling, that you don't want to discuss it in detail. That's Sophie's spicy hot take for the week. And if you see me get cancelled, it's for this reason. But I had to kind of get that off my chest. It's kind of been on my mind for the past kind of like 3.5 months, 4 months since I've made this channel. So I just kind of thought it'd be interesting to kind of have that discussion. That's how I see it. But hey, we've had our rant. We're going to get into episode 12.
つまりこれでウォールマリアの穴を塞ぐことが可能になった。
調査兵団はウォールマリア奪還作戦の準備を急いで。
Why do I feel like the Beast Titan's not gonna allow them to do that? Because he is within the walls, right?
どうもこいつを撃って巨人になるらしいな。
Oh my god, the music is so good.
彼らの運命を握るものがここにあった。
それで瓶の中身は解明できそうなのか。
それがどうも我々の技術ではこれ以上探ることはできないようです。エレンとヒストリアから聞いたように人間の骨髄液由来の成分では
It's spinal fluid, isn't it? Because that's what Roy said.
空気に触れるとたちまち気化してしまい分析は困難です。
すると誰に委ねる？エルヴィン、君か？
いえ。
Oh?
私は兵士としては手負いのみです。この箱は最も生存確率の高い優れた兵士に委ねるべきかと。リヴァイ、引き受けてくれるか？
任務なら命令すればいい。
これを使用する際はどんな状況かわからない。
Trust Levi with his
つまり現場の
life.
判断も含めて君に託すことになりそう。状況によっては誰に使用するべきか君が決めることになる。
Who to use it on?
任せてもいいか？
お前の夢ってのが叶ったら、その後はどうする？
Does that mean they're gonna turn somebody into a Titan for experiments?
叶えてみないことにはな。
了解だ。
Okay, that's a bit daunting. I guess they need to see how it works, but how do you
そろ
choose?
そろ私の作品を披露したいのだが。
Oh god, no.
まだ諦めておらんかったか。
Not your weird torture devices.
さらしてみよう。兵団への信頼も地に叩き落とされるぞ。
芸術わからんやつめ。
It's not art. It's disgusting. Of the battle to retake the wall. So there's going to be a battle on episode 13 then. And this is the night before.
グリシャ・イエーガーは壁の外から来た人間である可能性が高いと。
Yep.
アニやライナー、ベルトルトと同じように彼は巨人の力を持っていたしね。でもその3人と違うのは壁の中の人類に協力的だったってこと。
Because they're different races of people.
おそらくはこの壁に入ってから独力で王政を探るなどしていたんだろうし、いずれにしても凄まじい意識と覚悟がなきゃできることじゃない。死に際にそこに全てがあると言い残した地下室。そこには一体何があると思う？
The truth.
言ってはいけなかったこと。グリシャ・イエーガーが言いたくても言えなかったこと。
Because he'd be killed.
つまり初代レース王が我々の記憶から消してしまった世界の記憶だと思いたいが、
I agree, Owen. That's where my mind's at.
ウォールマリア奪還作戦は2日後に決行する。
Beast Titan's not gonna allow that to
地下室には何
happen.
があるのか知りたければ見に行けばいい。それが調査兵団だろう。
Music is so
で
ominous.
は各班を任せたぞ。
でも今日ぐらいは肉を食ってもいいですよね。
そうだな。たまにはガキどもに大人の解消を見せつけてやらねえと。
Oh, I'm so
シャーリ
nervous.
ス団長の隠匿罪についてはどうする？
ほっとけばいい。あんなのに構ってる暇はないよ。
ショックだよな、ハンジ。あんたの憧れだったのに。
うるさい。
なんだ、リヴァイ。
He was like, get out of here.
ウォールマリアを奪還した後はどうする？
脅威の排除だ。壁の外にはどうしても我々を巨人に食わせたいと思っている奴がいるらしいから。
Wants to start a war.
もっとも それが何なのかは地下室に答えがあると踏
Owen,
んでいる。
bad decision, bud.
だからさっき言った通りだ。
Then again,
地下室に行った後、
you kind of have to weigh it up if peace can truly be achieved by being ignorant to history and not owning to the repercussions. You can't just ignore the threat that is people trying to destroy everything that you love and hold dear. So it's a hard one because it's like, do you want to bring war upon the people within the walls by like instigating something? But at the same time, he knows that there is a threat outside of the wall and that it is going to topple everything, and there cannot truly be peace unless the threat is eliminated. It's such a hard one. Show makes me so morally conflicted.
お前がそこまで生きてるかわからねえから聞いてんだぜ。その体はもう以前のようには動かせねえ。現場の指揮は判事に託せ。お荷物抱える
Oh
のは
well,
真っ平だ。
that gives me a bad feeling that he's not making it out of season 3.
説明する。いや、実際そうするつもりだ。
He's not gonna allow that though. He's gonna die for the truth. He's gonna die to try and achieve the truth. That's all he's ever wanted.
餌で構わない。おとりに使え。指揮権の序列もこれまで通り。私がダメなら判事。判事がダメなら次だ。確かに困難な作戦になると予想されるが、人類にとって最も重要な作戦になる。そのために手は尽くしてある。すべて私の発案だ。
Owen's dying
私
before
がやらなければ成功率が下がる。
そうだ。作戦は失敗するかもしれね
え。It's similar to when they brought Hannes back.
お前は椅子に座って頭を動かすだけで十分。
Only to kill him off. It's so emotionally gut
それが
punches.
一番迷惑な話で、人間にとっちゃそれが一番いい選択のはずだ。
Owen's not going to sit there and not do anything for the sake of humanity.
おいおいおいおい、待て待て。これ以上俺に建前を使うなら、お前の両足の骨を折る。だがウォールマリア奪還作戦は確実にお留守番しねえとな。
I understand where Levi's coming from. Losing Owen would be more damaging to humanity than he thinks.
確かにお前の言う通り。手負いの兵士は現場を退く頃かもしれない。
But Owen doesn't strike me as somebody that could just sit there idly by.
この世の真実が明らかになる瞬間には、私が立ち会わなければならない。
His life goal.
そんなに大事か。
He needs to know what his father died for, or that his father died for something, died for the truth.
ああ。
そうか。エルヴィン、お前の判断を信じよう。
But that pride is what I think is going to get him killed. And it's a loss to humanity to him. At the fall of War Maria, there was a dramatic decrease in production. Livestock in particular suffered due to acquiring plentiful land as a result, meat became expensive and occasionally scarce. Which is why Sasha always stole meat and why they kind of looked at her like, what the fuck?
くれぐれも民間人に悟られるなよ。兵士ならば騒ぎすぎにを英気を養ってみせろ。
え、肉？何これ？肉？
She's about to have a breakdown.
今晩はウォールマリア奪還の前祝いだ。乾杯。あれちょっと。やべえ、ふざけんじゃねえぞいもんな。自分が何してかかってんのか。やめてくれサシャ。俺お前を殺したくねえんだ。一人で全部食うやつがあるっけ。サシャ、その肉は何だ。分からなくなっちまったのか。
強者兵団は肉も食えなかったのか。不憫だな。
コニー、早くサシャを落として。
やってるけどこいつ意識ないのに動いてんだよ。
Sasha's fucking lost it. Sasha, Jesus Christ.
やっと力尽きた。以前は人に肉を分け与えようとしてたんだよな。
いつだよ。
Back in series 1.
固定法整備のあの日だよ。
She did.
長官の食料庫からお肉取ってきました。大丈夫ですよ。土地を奪還すればまた牛も羊も買えますから。
Like a starvation mindset. where she thinks she's never gonna
巨人が入ってくる
get to taste meat again.
消えた
気の毒だと思ったよ。
おい
The I thought I felt sorry for you is very profound now that I'm thinking of it as two races of people who are at war with one another. And that Bertolt's been raised all his life to hate the people that live within the walls and therefore to feel no guilt about killing them, about getting their blood on his hands because it's for a worthy cause. It's to avenge the horrific atrocities that have been done to his people so that when interacts with Eren and learns about Eren's mum having died, he says, I felt sorry for you because that's not an emotion he expected to have in relation to Eren. Someone he's been raised to hate, someone that he's been raised to dehumanize in a way and not care about the consequences of his actions, and truly did feel sorry that his actions resulted in the death of Eren's mother because he's actually seen consequences of it. And not just the consequences, but possibly learning that the propaganda that he's been raised with isn't true. In the same way that Reiner also has that realization and it causes the internal conflict, internal split in him because they're finding inconsistencies with what they've been taught versus the reality. And that's what's causing the shift in their mentality. Of course, I could be entirely wrong, but the little tidbits of information that we're receiving very much are backing up my idea that they are two races of people at war with one another. And again, I'll get into this in the timeline in the outro. But coming to the realization that I had been almost mimicking the people within the walls and viewing Titans as separate to humans, that was where I was going wrong. I made it more complicated for myself.
まだ4ヶ月しか経ってないのかまだ4ヶ月だでも4ヶ月で俺たちあのリヴァイ班だスピード出世ってやつだよなお前は天才だからな当たり前だろ
確かに俺はまだ弱いがだからこそ前線で敵の出方を探るにはうってつけじゃないか
なんだ一丁前に自己犠牲語って勇敢気取りか
しかしその精神がなければ全体を機能させることはできないだろう
新兵から真っ先に捨て駒にしてたら次の世代に続かねえだろだからお前らの班は後ろから見学でもして生きて帰ることが仕事なんだよ一番使えねえのは1にも2にも突撃しかできねえ死にすぎやろ
Stop winding him up!
じゃあそりゃ誰のことだ
お前以外にいるかよ死に急ぎ野郎は
それが最近分かったんだけど俺は結構普通なんだよなそんな俺に言わせりゃお前は臆病すぎだぜ
Oh my god.
じゃあ
It's like they were back in training.
てめえこそなんで髪伸ばしてんだこの勘違い野郎
おいなんだ
顔以外にしとけよてめえ破けちゃうだろうがおりゃ
I mean, Jean, you were kind of asking for it. You were egging him on.
何か始まったぞ
巨人の力がなかったらお前何回死んだんだ
Oh, low blow.
ミカサに助けてもらってこれ以上死に急いだらぶっ殺すぞ
それは肝にメンスとキラーお前こそ母ちゃん大事にしろよジャンプ止めなくていいの いいと思う
It's nice to see them let loose in a way. Back like they were when they were training.
いつまで続くんだまずいぞもう肉が出てきちまう
おいお前ら全員はしゃぎすぎだもう寝ろあと掃除しろ
Sasha. Oh, she's intense.
自分で言うのもなんだけど俺もっと大事にされた方がいいと思う
むしろ怪我してもすぐ治るからなって思って見てたよ。でも元気が戻ったね。
It's like the old Eren's back. Reminds me of series 1 when they all decided they were going to train together.
別に
It's
元気
reminiscent
があ
of
ろう
that
となか
scene.
ろうとやることをやるつもりだ。なんで俺にはミカサやリヴァイ兵長みたいな力がねえんだって。
They've all grown up so much
感じ
since
まった。
then. It's wild.
でも兵長だってお前だって一人じゃどうにもならないよな。だから俺たちは自分にできることをなんか見つけて、それをつなぎ合わせて大きな力に変えることができる。
It's nice to see him so
人と人が
optimistic
違
for
うのは
once.
きっとこういう時のためだったんだ。
He's been through a lot, so it's nice to see Eren kind of returning. How do you see? Oh, it's just something that looks like Hannes. I was gonna say, I was like, Hannes is dead.
ウォールマリアを取り戻して襲ってくる敵を全部倒したらまた戻れるの。あの時に。
戻すんだよ。でももう全部は帰ってこねえ。ツケを払ってもらわねえとな。
それだけじゃないよ。壁の外にあるのは巨人だけじゃないよ。炎の水、氷の大地、砂の雪原。それを見に行くために調査兵団に入ったんだから。
It's so sweet to see them progress and come to terms with everything they've gone through in their life.
まずは海を見に行こうよ。エレンはまだ疑っているんだろ。見てろよ。絶対あるんだから。
しょうがねえ。そりゃ実際見るしかねえな。
約束だからね。絶対だよ。
Notice something. I think it was that, yeah, you did, as if Eren didn't have those ambitions himself, almost as if Eren's ambitions have shifted and he lost that kind of motivation and will to see the outside world in the same way that Armin wishes to. Seeing how far they've all come and everything they've lost to get to this moment is so incredibly sad and bittersweet. The fact that they're all still together, they're all looking out for one another, really warms my heart, but I do worry because back in series 2, Armin and Mikasa had that conversation where it said, why is Eren always away from us? And I have to wonder, how much longer are they going to be a trio before they're forced into separate directions? They're forced to go their separate ways. Maybe they have a conflict of interest, a different idea of what to do against the upcoming threat. I can't see Eren allowing it to slide. I think Eren's need for revenge is possibly going to make him blind to the plight of other people, and that could lead to him going on a rampage against other people because he sees them as a threat that needs to be eradicated in order for those within the wall to live and survive. I can't see Armin agreeing with that, primarily because Armin strikes me as somebody that is able to see both sides of an argument. He's quite critical in his thinking, which would probably allow him to understand that who they deem as the threat is only that way because of what they've been taught and told, that it's not a matter of them hating those within the walls because they want to, but it's because of those in power, because of their government. And I think Eren is just going to lump them all as one and doesn't care in a sense that there's innocence, doesn't care in a sense that there's children. He'll see them all as guilty in the same way that they see everyone within the walls as guilty and as a target. And I think Armin isn't going to agree with that. I think Armin is going to be able to see deeper into it, that it's not a matter of everyone is instantly guilty of killing those within the walls, that it is those probably higher up, because as we know from within the walls, if the society outside the walls functions the same way, it's always the elite, and it's those beneath that get used cannon fodder, that get used weapons. And I think Armin's going to be able to see that, but I think Eren is going to be so hell-bent on his need to avenge his mother and to make them pay for what they have done to him, to the people he's lost, for all the suffering he's undergone, that he's not going to separate that. He's going to see them all as equally guilty, and by extension is going to enact revenge on them all, regardless of whether they're innocent or not. He's not going to see the same picture as Armin, and I can see that being a conflict between them two as the series progresses. When they're reminiscing about the old times and they're reminiscing about what it was before, you almost have to wonder, are there people in the other town that also felt the same way, that also had the same conversation, that also wanted to go back to a time when they knew peace and not hatred and war and corruption? And it's almost bittersweet because you see this conversation between them and they don't know the truth of what's happened. They don't know what's ongoing. They don't know why people hate them. And you have to wonder if those that do know still have similar ambitions of living in a peaceful society where they're not hated for being born, where they're not hated for simply existing, that they just want to go back to a time where they were allowed to thrive and survive. And just, this show is so deep. It really is. Uh,
日没直前いよいよだな。
頑張れ
フレーゲル。
ウォールマリアを取り返してくれ。人類の
I
未来を任せたぞ。
don't think Erwin's coming back from this.
この街を救ってくれてありがとう。全員無事に帰ってきてくれよ。
I don't think Erwin's coming back from it.
勝手を言いやがれ。
調査兵団がこれだけ歓迎されるのはいつ以来だ。
A long time.
そんな時があったのか。
私が知る限りでは初めてだ。
Oh, I have a sinking feeling in my gut.
ウォールマリア最終奪還作戦開始。
I'm so proud. I genuinely cry over nothing, and I don't quite understand why. I think it's the music and the emotional impact, but like it gets me in the core, and the only thing I can do is cry. So like I know it seems silly to cry over this scene, and I cry a lot. I'm so sorry. But the conversation that Levi and Erwin have, and the reaction Erwin has had on the wall, and that this is the first time that they've ever received such a send off, and his comment of the final attempt to take Wall Maria. All of these seem like little hints that Erwin is not coming back. And I think that's what's getting me emotional. I think that's what's upsetting me. Is that I've now convinced myself that Erwin is not returning from this mission alive. Calling it here and now, episode 12, Erwin is not coming back. Erwin's gonna die this season. There's just been too many little narrative hints, little threads of conversation, and his refusal to just sit back, and that he would rather risk his life in order to know the truth, to die for the truth in the same way that his father died for trying to find the truth, seems the way that Erwin's character arc is going to go, much like Hannes's character arc was to try and avenge Carla for not having been able to do it in series 1. And I feel like Erwin's full circle moment is coming to fruition. There's been too much focus on Erwin this episode that's making me very like nervous. God, here we go. You're new. Somebody else there that wasn't there before. Such beautiful animation. Ymir! What the fuck?
お前ら自分で何をやっているのか分かっているのか
Okay. I have thoughts. I love how it's drawn like a storybook, and there's almost connotations to Alice in Wonderland, like the falling in the lake. It's almost like her falling into Wonderland in itself. So I loved that outro. I thought it was very artistically beautiful. But if I had seen that, I think in episode 1, I probably would have seen the foreshadowing quite a bit for like Eren and Grisha and then younger Historia. So I know people say the outros aren't spoilers, but like they are very heavily symbolic and heavy foreshadowing. That scene, I have theories, I have thoughts about that scene, as in Levi's anger to that extent. I think that's going to be in the aftermath of Owen dying. Him losing his temper like that to that extent, I think Owen has just died in that scene. And this is the aftermath of it. What worries me is that they're the only 3 that we see. So we don't know what happens to the others. We don't know what their fate is, which is very daunting. But the glitch effect, the way that like you're just watching that and it's really, you know, soft and melodic and really cute. And then all of a sudden, like you get these like glitches and flashing images. It's really cool. I really liked how that was presented. I definitely am glad I've watched it. A lot of people have kind of said this to me before, like, oh, you over theorize and you overthink things, and then that's going to ruin stuff when it comes up. But it never has, because even when my theory has been right, I've just been really excited that I was right, because I'm a very analytical person, and being very analytical means that I get really overexcited when I am correct. It doesn't really matter to me if I'm right or wrong. I just like theorizing, but when I am right, I'm still surprised because I didn't expect to be. I don't go in with the I am 100% correct, and therefore if this happens I'm not going to be shocked. I always go in with like, this is what I think it is, but I could be very off base, and therefore when it does turn out to be correct I'm like, oh, I'm like really excited. I'm already on the hill that Erwin's dying, and that's because we got the conversation between him and Levi. We've got him refusing to stay back despite the fact that he knows that it would be a blow to humanity if he was lost, because he has been humanity's biggest champion, humanity's biggest advocate. He has been the one hell-bent on finding the truth. And it's going to break my heart if he dies and never learns the truth. If he doesn't figure out what's happening before he dies, I'm going to be absolutely crushed, because that's all he's ever wanted. And all he's ever wanted as well is to avenge his father, to know that his father died for something, that his father died because his theory was correct. And as much as his dad didn't deserve to die, I think Owen just wants that confirmation that his dad's death meant something, that his theory was right, that his father was justified. And just the whole, this is the first time that the Survey Corps have ever had such a reaction, and him being over the moon and happy and responding and then saying that this is the final operation to retake Wall word final. I know people are gonna be like, you're reading too much into it. He just means that he's 100% sure that they are going to take back War Maria. I don't think that's the case. I think he means final because he has an inkling that he may come from this. He even says use bait. So I think his willingness to be used as bait could be his inevitable outcome is that he risks it all to save people. I think his final moment is going to be a blaze of glory. He's going to sacrifice himself to save those he cares and loves for. And I think it's going to be like a distraction tactic. He's going to catch the enemy off guard, and it's going to be almost like a suicide charge. He's going to go running in. He's going to risk everything to protect those he cares about. And we know a battle is coming because the title for this episode is Night of the Battle. Know a battle's coming. We've also just seen that Reiner is on the wall and there's somebody else new there that wasn't with them before, and that's not the Beast Titan. So we know the Beast Titan's there, we know Bertolt's there, we know Reiner's there, and there's somebody else. So are we about to see a new Titan form that we haven't seen before? Because that's kind of terrifying if so. I think we're about to see a new Titan coming up because we've seen the Armored, we've seen the Colossal. I mean, we're about to see a new Titan in this battle because he wouldn't be there if he wasn't significant in helping Reiner. Reiner as the Armored is incredibly powerful, and I think whoever this Titan is also going to be incredibly powerful. Okay. So I've gone full conspiracy theorist. I will be zooming in, but yeah, you can see I've gone a bit crazy. And that's okay, but I'm going to walk you through the timeline that I have so far. So, we're starting at 100 years, right? This is something that I did want to delve into. I don't know how well this is going to be read, but I will be reading everything and explaining everything. So I did mention this in episode 11, that the show is very good at making you forget things because there's so much information thrown at you in one time. And it's only when you get closer to the reveals that you begin to make those points again, because that's what the show wants. It wants you to only remember these details when it serves the story purpose, because then it can build the suspense and intrigue. It's smart story writing by Asayama because not only do you get drip fed small snippets that rely on you asking questions, when you are given information, it's far too much to understand and put together in one sitting. So the narrative kind of trips you up on purpose to throw you off the fact that if we could remember every single detail, we'd have a better chance of putting it together on a first watch. It's why the show as well is designed for rewatchability, because of the hints and the foreshadowing that you better pick up on when you know the full context of the series. We have the 100-year mark, and that was when the walls were built. We know that the first king built the walls, and we know that he's disallowing his descendants from destroying the Titans. As to why that is, we're not fully sure as of yet. We know that humanity's mind was wiped when they entered the wall. We know that humanity believes they are the only ones left in existence, and the Titans have destroyed everything outside of the walls. We were told this in series 1 when Eren is being taught that humanity was pushed to the brink of destruction by the Titans, and therefore the walls were built to protect the last of humanity. But we know this not to be true. We know that there's other people who live outside of the walls. We go up here, which is where I fell into the trap of seeing Titan shifters as separate to humans altogether. And that is what led me to getting confused when they were discussing humanity, because I saw Titans as one thing and humanity is separate. So the mention of pure Titans also being human means that race are humans, but I was kind of inferring them as Titans, but they're not. They're humans whose bloodline grants them unique abilities. So like every shifter is still human, but with unique blood that allows them to transform. So one of my questions is, can everyone transform, or only certain people, only certain races of people transform because of their bloodline? So then that leads to this, which is, are Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt also connected to noble bloodlines because they have unique Titans? Did they inherit them similar to how the race family inherit the founding Titan? If we look at it that Titans can be passed on through descendants, through generations, what's to say that the Titans that Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt have inherited are not family titans passed down to them through the years by their descendants in turn. Or maybe they were selected to inherit those titans from somebody else. Maybe it doesn't have to be descendants, but maybe their people have a different ritual process where they select the youngest and strongest within their community to inherit the next titan form. Maybe that's how they do it, but there has to be something in their bloodline that allows them to inhabit that ability, to allow them to use that ability. I mentioned this in episode 11 as well, that now I believe that when they're referring to humanity, they are not referring to all of humanity, but just their race of people within the walls. So that there's two races. There's probably more than two, but the two big ones are those within the walls and those outside of the walls, who I've been calling the warriors for sake of ease. So I wasn't sure how this worked with Reiner saying that their war is against humanity, because that implies that he doesn't see himself as human. I kind of deliberated that this could be to maybe his bloodline, that he doesn't see himself as human. Perhaps humanity is a generic reference to anyone who is just generic, as in they have no noble bloodline or abilities passed down. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought maybe Reiner doesn't want them to be aware of humanity existing outside of the wall, and puts on a masquerade of not being human, that he's lying to them because he knows that they don't know that there's other people outside of the walls. They think they're the only humans left, so he's playing into that charade. It could be Reiner's way of protecting his people and keeping their mission secret for a little longer, especially because he knows that they're beginning to suspect, and that he's possibly worried that if he says too much, it might give away what's about to happen, what they're intending to do. So he kind of plays into that narrative of not being human, but he is human. We then come down to, we know that the founding titan, so the titan that was the first ever titan, was passed from descendant to descendant. We know that titans are humans, so they're not separate entities, they are the same thing. We know that they are injected with spinal fluid, which transforms your titans. We know that this is weaponized by both those within the walls and those outside. That also leads to that question of, are all humans able to be transformed into pure titans, or only specific? I still don't know. I still don't have an answer. I have a suspicion that it has to be specific bloodlines, but I'm gonna kind of wait for the show to kind of tell me, because I'm not like 100%. Then it comes down to the identity of the founding titan, and I believe it's Ymir, because she holds such high reverence. She's spoken of with high respect, even referred to as a goddess. There's this otherworldly connotation which suggests that she is the first with the founding titan. In Roy's flashback also appears. If she is the first to develop these powers, was she used to establish a monarchy / race of people who viewed themselves as superior to another that they lived alongside? Could her powers have been weaponized for evil purposes by the first king? And is that why they are hated by the warriors? Because if she is the first to have that power, it strikes me that somebody would use that ability, that they would use that strength and power to take territory, to take control of the lands around them. And I have a feeling that she's possibly been used for that purpose. She was seen less as a person and more as a weapon. We also know that around the time that the walls were built, the Ackermans are persecuted for speaking out against the first king, because they wanted to protect humanity. And some of my questions have been, is this because the first king refuses to use the abilities to protect his people, which the Ackermans disagree with, as it puts them all at risk? So we know that everyone that inherits the founding titan in the race family line cannot use the abilities. They are barred from using it. There's almost like a lock on that power, and that has to do with the first king. So I'm wondering if the Ackermans' disagreement with the first king is because he refuses to ever use that power again and forbids his descendants from using that power. And then, as an extension to that, I said, is this part of the building paradise by creating a false sense of peace, which includes never using the founding titan abilities anymore due to the suffering it has created? Meaning, if Ymir's powers were used to wage war, could part of the point of building the walls was to end that war, and thus the banning of using those abilities was to try and keep peace to prevent any more loss of life. So we know that it's been 100 years since the wall was built. We don't know what happened prior to the walls being built. We don't know if there was something that required the necessity of such walls in order to protect people. I'm 99% sure that there was a war between the first king and the warriors, and I believe that the walls were built to protect what was left of his people. But I'm also wondering if he's isolating his people so they don't dilute their blood by intermarrying with outsiders, almost as like a racial purity kind of thing. It wouldn't shock me if the show kind of goes that route. So then you have Titans are portrayed as the real enemy, but this is a distraction tactic to keep people compliant so that there's no infighting or civil conflict within the walls itself. It distracts people from wanting to learn/know the truth. If humanity has a common enemy, then they are not going to look at the higher ups, they're not going to look at the elite, they're not going to question the way that society is. Of course, you're going to have people who are the exemption to that. It's a way of redirecting people's energy. It's a way of preventing questions being asked. I believe I also brought up this whole idea that the Titans were more than what they appeared in series 1, because Pixies kind of talks about humanity needing something to band together in order to unite them because of infighting and conflict. And of course, Pixies doesn't know the truth of what's going on. He just knows what he has been raised with, which is Titans are the enemy, and that keeps people in line because everybody sees the Titans as the true threat and that everything within the walls is to protect them. But I think his words are actually more profound without him realizing that his words are more profound. And that's because there's truth to it, that this narrative of Titans being the enemy is a crafted one in order to keep people within the walls compliant and ignorant to the truth of their own history. I'm sure that there must have been a war based on the hatred that Annie, Rhino, and Bertold hold for the walls. And Annie talks about being hated from birth, which makes it sound as if there was an ethno-nationalist conflict between the First King and their people, the warriors, that resulted in mass atrocities. And what that means is that Annie was hated for simply being who she was, for being from the race of people that she is from. And therefore, that's why she holds such contempt for the walls, contempt for the people within it, because she has been raised to believe that everyone within the walls hates her simply for being born. So when Annie talks about being hated from birth, I think that is a narrative that's been pushed by her people because they are aware of the history before the walls were built. Their memories weren't wiped. They're exempt from that. So I think this narrative is pushed on to the younger generation that there's a race of people that live within the walls and they have a better life than you do, that they have better luxuries than you do, and that they hate you. And this is why they hate you. And this is all the atrocities they committed against you and our people because of who we are, because of our culture, because of our race. And therefore, you have to go and enact revenge on them. You have to go and take back from them what they've stolen from us. You have to seek vengeance for the lives lost. And it's just those words of being hated from birth makes it seem like a narrative that is driven into them, that because of who they are and because of who their people are and the long conflict that they've had with possibly the First King, that they do believe that then never going to have peace so long as the walls and the people within the walls exist, which is why they're so hell-bent on starting a war and erasing them, because they don't believe that they can live peacefully so long as the walls exist and the people within the walls exist. So we're going to go from 100 years, because we still haven't received a hell of a lot of information for this, all the way to sometime between the walls and Ymir being executed. So I'm not 100% sure of the timeline. It could either take place shortly after the walls were established by the First King or prior to the walls themselves. We're not sure when this falls into place. We just know that she wandered for 60 years. So we don't know if this is after the walls were built or prior to the walls being built. So this could have taken place during a war between the First King and the warriors, or it could take place shortly after peace. I'm trying to figure out where I want to begin, because this is a little bit of a difficult one to like explain. So from this, we have subject of Ymir. We know in Ela's notebook that the subject of Ymir is mentioned by the Titan. It declares itself as a subject of Ymir. So the Titan in Ela's notebook is the same woman executed alongside Ymir in her flashback. Referring to herself as a subject of Ymir is to show reverence and worship and respect, but it can also be a symbol of national belonging. Okay? I know this is a weird one, but like, hear me out. Because there were numerous people in that room in Ymir's flashback, it could be implied that it's not actually subject, but subjects, like the plural, not the singular. So she is a subject of Ymir because she is one person, but it's actually subjects of Ymir. So people that worship and highly regard Ymir as a founding figure. Subject could infer allegiance to a monarch, but subject can also be used to infer a nation. So subjects in British history prior to 1949 meant belonging to and closely connected to the British nation, including British colonies. So even being in a colony owned by the British meant that you were subject to their rules, regulations, laws, and you were bound by the monarchy itself. So that then leads to the question that if that's what they mean by subjects, could our Ymir be from a colony? And by our Ymir, I don't mean this mythical goddess figure of Ymir, but the Ymir that we see executed, that we see trained, and that is in a very sapphic relationship with Historia. But could our Ymir be from a colony ruled by the first king that fell into the hands of their enemy? Hence the execution due to their ties because they're regarded as the enemy and reviled. I'm going to get into that a little bit further just because I know that seems like a jump, but there are some indications that that could be true. Subjects as well also means under the authority of the state. So the subject of Ymir would be people ruled by Ymir. Or it could be because they are from the same nationality as Ymir. We don't know much about Ymir other than she is linked to the blood of the king, that she is possibly the founding titan. It's not officially confirmed, but I'm on the hill that she is the founding titan. And I said that before it was even revealed that the founding titan looked female, because just the reverence and respect that she's shown, she has to be of such significance to be worthy of worship. So we don't know her nationality, but we could infer that by subjects of Ymir, that they are people who descend from the same nationality, and that due to her constantly being referred to as a goddess, they are proud of that link and heritage, so they declare themselves as subjects of Ymir to make that connection known, because they're proud of being from the same nation as her or the same lineage as her. Then we go up to the blood of the king. So then the mention of subject of Ymir with the blood of the king insinuates that the royal bloodlines come from the king and Ymir, that there's a connection between the two. And if the founding titan is Ymir, then it makes sense that that was then taken by the first king and then passed down the descendant line. And the insinuation comes from the fact that her name is placed alongside his and even before his, which shows reverence and respect. I did mention this back in series 2, and I think it's not a leap. I think that this is correct, that Sina, Maria, and Rose are the daughters of the first king and Ymir. Because it would make sense that you would name the boundaries of the wall after your children to signify legacy, but also the fact that we don't actually know who Sina, Maria, and Rose are, but they must be of such status to have been permanently memorialized through the walls themselves. They are of such high respect and reverence that they need to be in the descendant line. And I even said in episode 10, when Historia is crowned, the family resemblance between Historia and the three women and their portraits is astounding. So I believe that they have to be her descendants, and in being her descendants, they have to be of the blood of the king, but they have to be way back in the past. So I believe that they are the first king and Ymir's children. So then we move to Ymir and her followers being punished for their association with Ymir. I mentioned I received a minor spoiler, and the minor spoiler that I received was someone confirming that Ymir does come from outside of the wall, which then kind of confirmed to me that my theory about Castle Utgard being conquered territory was not correct. But it wasn't a huge spoiler, but it was enough to kind of shift my perspective. And again, are the subjects of Ymir a race of people tied to Ymir, like they all belong to the same nationality, which links back to how the use of subject can infer national belonging. So just looking at the language and what it means, it does seem like subjects of Ymir are possibly of the same lineage somehow. We know that the subjects of Ymir are looked down upon with disgust based on being harassed by people of the town, but also the fact that they were raided. They were raided by soldiers, which means this was taken incredibly seriously. It was not something that could be shrugged off. It was very obviously something that was taken as a direct threat to them. Ymir shows genuine fear when talking about Reiner and Bertolt, almost as if she knows what they're capable of and how they function and how they run, because she's had direct experience with them before. She negatively associates their town with the actions of the past, meaning that the soldiers who attacked her and the other subjects of Ymir must be from the same place as Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt. What makes me think that she is executed because she's from a different race of people is because she's not actually targeted until she outright says that she is of the blood of the king, which would mean she was a direct relation. So clearly this area that she's in, that she inhabits, and the people within it do not have any love for Ymir or the first king. This one I've already mentioned before about Ymir finding saltwater fish at Castle Utgard, which suggests that at one point this area traded or raided another place close to the sea prior to the walls, and could still be a conquered or colonized territory that now exists within the walls because of how the walls have been built. Because obviously if you conquer territory, you're going to like hold on to it, you're going to encapsulate it within what you're attempting to protect. So it could still be conquered or colonized territory, but I don't believe that Ymir is from near Castle Utgard. She must be from further away than we expected. So Ymir is able to shift back after consuming Marcel. We again have to look at the idea of whether shifting is a bloodline ability similar to what we see passed on from the first king. If certain families or races possess the ability to pass it down from generation to generation. We know that Ymir has no love for the walls and does not want his return to them. So Ymir will have retained her memories because she is not from within the wall. Therefore, she would not have had her memories wiped. So she knows more than what she's saying. It seems like she despises the first king because in despising the walls and why they were built and constructed, that also infers that she dislikes the first king because he was the one that created them. One of the questions I've had is if Ymir is from outside of the walls and she is horrendously mistreated by another race of people because of being a subject of Ymir, could the people within the walls also be subjects of Ymir? So if we look at subjects of Ymir as being a race of people connected to the first king and Ymir, then the people within the walls must be subjects of Ymir. And because of how they're reviled by Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt's people, that must mean that there are people that exist outside of the walls that are also of the same race or nationality. So I'm kind of leaning in that it must be like a nationality or a race, or perhaps it's both. Leaning into the fact that you have the warriors and then you have the people within the walls that are the subjects of Ymir. But I don't know for sure because this is just taking a stab in the dark, because it would make sense that in being connected with Ymir and thus being connected to the blood of the king, that you are of the race of people within the walls, that you are connected to them somehow by extension, because it's the first king that built the walls, it's Ymir that's the founding titan. Your whole relationship dynamic is built on the people ruling that area, so you have to be connected to them somehow by either race or nationality. I'm beginning to believe that subjects of Ymir is a race of people, but that race of people lives within the walls and outside of the walls in different areas, because we know that Ymir lived outside of the walls and was targeted for her connection, which means that there must have been a war or friction between these two races of people for them to target the subject of Ymir, because they clearly look down on them and they clearly frown upon them because of their race, because of who they are, because of who they're connected to. So her hatred for the first king, I'm wondering if it could be that she believes the first king abandoned her and other subjects of Ymir by building the walls and retreating with, and not including everybody in the territories outside of the walls. Or if her timeline is prior to the walls being built, she resents the first king for his actions that make other people hate and mistreat her, and others for their connection to him and Ymir. That's all I have for that. I'm sure there's more foreshadowing in series 2 that like I just have missed because I don't fully understand, but yeah, within the last 30 years or so, because I don't actually know how long it's been. So we know that the walls have been around for 100 years. We don't actually know what time frame this is happening because we see a lot of information going back to when Eren was younger, when Grisha was younger. So it could be like the last 40, 50 years. We know that within Eren's upbringing, that generations of those within the walls are taught that they are the only humans left. And we know this isn't true and that there's the existence of another race of people who hate those within the walls. So Annie speaks about being hated from birth. And Ymir says the same, indicating that there's a sense of ethno-nationalist resentment between the two races. And the reason I think this is because I think Ymir is hated for being from the race connected with Ymir and the first king, and Annie is hated for being connected to her race of people, the warriors, but no one within the walls actually knows the history to hate them. So it's kind of ironic that they're taught to hate these people, but these people actually don't know about them or their existence. It makes me wonder that could the first king have committed genocide against the warriors? And if so, Annie, Reiner, and Bertold were raised to hate and seek revenge for the past because of the history of violence being taught from one generation to the next. So they're seen as needing to enact revenge for the people that they have lost, for what they have suffered. So this again leads into Bertold and Annie both say that they have to get their hands bloody and that it's not by choice. It's implying that they feel that if they don't bloody their hands, then it will be their own lives at risk. And by extension, that of their people. Is this because they have been raised to never feel safe, so long as the walls and those within it exist? Again, is this because there was a war between their people prior to the wars has led to this systemic hatred? That also brings me to the Beast Titan. Beast Titan says, I'm sure we are speaking the same dialect, so implying that there's more than one dialect spoken in the world. This also implies that there is more than one race of people existing in the world, as we know it. We also know that other races exist because of the Ackermans, the Orientals, and there's also mention of other bloodlines too. So we know that different races exist within this world. It's not uncommon, and it's information we've already been given. The Beast Titan has significant interest in the ODM gear, and he took it away. It's almost as if they're looking at how the people in the walls defend themselves so they can prepare to counter those methods in an upcoming war. I'm presuming the Beast Titan was the one to inject Connie's village, which turned them into pure Titans, in the same way that Ymir was injected and turned into pure Titans. Again, this confirms that the injection is something known to both races of people, which means both races also have Titan shifters. So you have to ask the question of, was there a schism at some point between these races, perhaps over the abilities of the founding Titan and who should benefit from it? So it makes me wonder if Ymir is the source of the schism and source of the divide, which then created a war between these two races of people that has then created a legacy of violence that we're now seeing in place. So both races of people seem to have connections to Titans. I'm not entirely sure how or why yet because the show hasn't really told me or given me hints, but it does make you wonder if Ymir was the founding Titan, she was the first, she was the original. Could everyone who has the ability to shift have a connection to Ymir in their lineage at some point? So if she's the founder, then it would make sense that those who shift are descended from the very first Titan in existence. And if that is the case, could her bloodline be powerful enough to dwarf out other people? So say race 1 is descended from Ymir and marries someone from race 2, and they have children. Their children would possess the ability to shift because of the blood ties to Ymir. What kind of makes me think that is the case is if we take Mikasa. Mikasa is an Ackerman, right? But she's also an Oriental. So she's an Oriental and an Ackerman, but she has the abilities of the Ackerman bloodline. So it's almost as if the Ackerman bloodline has dwarfed out everything else, which indicates that no matter how far back you go, and regardless of intermarriage between different races, that bloodline connection is so strong that it's always going to persist and exist. So I'm wondering if that's sort of the same thing for the descendants of Ymir, that everyone who descends from Ymir, the race of people that descend from Ymir, even if they've intermarried with other people, all still have that connection to her because her blood is just that powerful. Again, I still think both races are distinctly different based on what Annie has said about being hated for just being born. Ymir says the same, but I think perhaps that isn't because she's from the same race as Annie, but that she experiences the same discrimination, but from Annie's people, which is perpetuating a cycle of violence. What if the first king discriminated against Annie's people? And that's been passed down from generation to generation. But at some point, the warriors begin to also perpetuate discrimination against anyone affiliated with Ymir, hence the subject of Ymir, hence Ymir being executed and the other people for their connection to Ymir and the blood of the king, aka the first king. I'm bouncing all over the place because there's different threads that all kind of tie into each other. So I was editing episode 6 of series 3 for YouTube, and there's something that was said to Zachary by one of the nobles that kind of struck me. And he says that the only blood in Zachary is slave blood, unlike their noble bloodline. So we know that some bloodlines were exempt from the mines being wiped, especially noble bloodlines. We know that they are self-serving in the interior to attempt to protect themselves from a greater threat by keeping people ignorant of a potential war. They would rather allow the rest of humanity to suffer so they have a greater chance of survival if war should come, because they'll be given an opportunity to hide. What has spawned my thinking from this comment is we know that blood of the king is royalty and that there are noble bloodlines that are separate from this, but they don't speak of Ymir with reverence or respect, which they would if that was the case, if Ymir was noble. So by slave, do they mean Ymir? So that anyone who descends from Ymir, e.g. subject of Ymir, equals slave blood. Perhaps this is an imposed class structure amongst their race of people. So almost like a 3-tier class structure where you have the monarchy, which is the blood of the king, which is the first king. Then you have the nobles and their bloodline, which is plural, so there's multiple of them. And then you have slave, which is singular, so that refers to one person, otherwise it would be slaves. So anyone descending from Ymir, possibly. If she is a slave, was she captured by the first king in his colonizing efforts and used as a weapon in the war against the warriors? Was she kept around because he wanted his bloodline to have her powers? Maybe he forced her into having his children so that his people and his descendants would be connected to her abilities, to her powers. So the mention of different races and bloodlines makes it apparent that the warriors will be of a different race that is separate to the people within the walls. Especially, again, Annie mentions about being hated from birth, implying that her race of people are disliked by the race within the walls, leading to a cycle of violence. Keep saying the same thing because it's a reoccurring message. Annie doesn't say it one time, she says it multiple times. So it just to me signifies that there's something deeper there, that there is entrenched hatred that she's been raised and taught. So then I've been thinking about Yuri, and Yuri speaks about humanity's fading twilight and wanting to build paradise. Paradise, I'm presuming, means peace. So could the first king have wanted to protect what was left of his people after a brutal war, and that's what they meant by building paradise? Because in their eyes, it was an escape from the outside world and all of it. Then by extension, can Yuri see the future? By fading twilight, does he mean that he knows a war is coming bigger than they've seen before that could be the ultimate end of all humanity as we know it, regardless of race? Did Grisha somehow figure this out too, and that's what's in the basement? And did Grisha steal the powers to give to Eren because he's not a descendant of the first king and not bound by his will, thus giving humanity a weapon to fight back against the warriors? But now we also have to suspect that Grisha is way older than he appears, and that he's from outside of the walls, which I suspected for a while that he wasn't from within the walls. But I also think he's older than what he looks like, that he could potentially be similar to Ymir in that, like, he been trapped in the body of a titan, but eventually did gain the ability to shift, which then helped him retain his youth, so he looks younger than he actually is. in the same way that Ymir looks younger than she actually is. So I think that's what it could be inferring. And we know that when somebody becomes Titan, it can fuck with your memories. So I think maybe his memories have been fucked with because he's become a Titan at some point. Then we lead to anyone who attempts to leave the walls is murdered and killed by the first interior police. And by extension, we then have Erwin's father, the teacher who was killed for discovering the truth about humanity being brainwashed, also becomes the catalyst for Erwin's pursuit of knowledge and to know the truth of what happened to humanity. We also know that Armin's mother and father were killed for attempting to escape the walls. The question I have is why? Is it simply to prevent people from learning about the past and the atrocities that people may have committed against another? Is it to prevent civil conflict and infighting? Is it to keep people complacent and content with their lives as they know it, thus unwilling to seek out others due to the threat of the Titans? I'm not fully sure what the ultimate goal is in hiding the truth. If it was war, then I can only think it's to make people forget the atrocities to build paradise through a false idea of peace. Can't truly be peace though if another race of people exists that hate you for your entire existence, but you've been brainwashed to know nothing about it. It's not really fair to penalize people that know nothing about their own history, but we're kind of seeing that take place with Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt's people not really caring, unless they don't know, but maybe they do know, or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they think that they're still guilty by association and thus they should be eradicated. Then we have the false monarch, Fritz, and then we found out that the race family are the true monarchs. And Historia is now queen. She refused the ability, allowing Eren to keep it, and she is breaking the cycle of control and violence, paving a new era for humanity, which makes me wonder if Historia will be significant in paving the way forward and creating a relationship between those within the walls and those outside of the walls, because we can see that Reiner also holds her in high regard, high respect. So you almost have to wonder if she is going to be the stepping stone for humanity coming together and working together and embracing one another after centuries of conflict. I'm wondering if the name race is a pseudonym that they adopted so that if the interior did infiltrate, because they will know of the true history of what's ongoing before the walls were built, then the real royal family and the founding Titan ability were not at risk of being killed and stolen. I still believe that the name Fritz has to be of significance, because why did they choose that name for the false monarch? It has to be the original monarchy name, perhaps as a double bluff to fool their enemies, because Reiner, Annie, and Bertolt didn't seem to think any different of it. They never really questioned it, and their goal was the interior, which means Fritz has to have meaning to them because they never looked at it as anything odd. They knew that name and they knew that person was who they had to target. So I think Fritz may be the original name of the monarchy, and I believe it was a pseudonym designed to protect the abilities they possess from being stolen by the warriors, since they also have an interest in it. We're nearing the end, I promise. And then we have Grisha's basement, which I think has all the information that Grisha has discovered about the history of the walls and the time before. And this is what sets him off on the path to steal the abilities from Frida, because he knows that in humanity's hour of need, they will not use that ability to protect the people within the walls. Only someone like Eren, who is not bound by the will of the first king, will be able to weaponize it for the advantage of the race of people within the walls. Not humanity in general, just humanity in relation to the people within the walls. My last point before I'm going to end this video, because it's 2 hours long, is the title in series 1 is To You in 2000 Years. And that's making me think that there's weird time travel of some sort, of memories possibly being transmitted from like 2000 years ago in the past. And I'm just gonna say it now, I cannot be coping with time travel stuff. It'll break my brain. I'm already struggling with the timeline as it is. I really don't need to be stressed about wonky timelines, but that title kind of struck me as being a little bit odd. And now I'm wondering if there's weird, funky timeline nonsense going on. Heading into episode 13 and the second arc of series 3, that is my current trajectory. That is my current thought process. That there are multiple races of people, that there was a war at some stage, that the walls were built to protect the last of that race of people because humanity was pushed to such an extent that there was worry that they would genuinely not survive if the war continued. The walls were built to put an end to a war, that the people within had their memories wiped because they wanted to build a false idea of peace, and that they hoped that potentially they would be left alone, which isn't the case because obviously committed atrocities against another group of people, they're going to obviously harbor resentment for you. And I think that resentment is playing out in that they are teaching the generations that have come after about this other race of people that live within the walls, that hate them, that target them because of who they are, and therefore they need to bloody their hands and enact revenge and attack them before they attack their people. They're seeing it as proactive measures essentially to erase them in order to protect their own. And that's not the case because the people within the walls don't understand. They don't know what's going on. They're not aware of their history. They're not aware of what's happening. I believe that subjects of Ymir could be the race of people then that live within the walls because of the connection that it has to the first king and to Ymir, but it's not as highly revered as noble bloodlines or as the blood of the king. So it could just be people that descend from the same nationality as Ymir, or even from Ymir herself. Maybe Ymir has multiple children. She has children with the king, but maybe she has multiple children beyond the king, and that's where the subjects of Ymir descend from, is that lineage. But I hope all of that made sense. The timeline is to try and make sense of what I think is happening in the show, where I think the show is going, and it also helps me keep track of pertinent questions that I have. I don't think I have much more to say than that, other than, yes, I have gone full conspiracy theory, I have gone quite mad, but the show is very confusing, very hard to follow at times. So the timeline has been really, really helpful for me in writing stuff down, but by extension, being able to ask questions about what I've written down. Long story short, there was a war. Humanity was pushed to the brink of extinction. The race of people that descend from Ymir and the First King were at risk of being erased. He built the walls to protect them, and in doing so, tried to create withstanding peace by not allowing them to remember the resentment and hatred that they feel for the other race of people, aka the warriors, and therefore probably hope that that would keep a war from happening again. But of course, but he has blocked the abilities of the founding titan from being used. So even if they suspect that war is coming, as they probably do, as Uri probably foresaw, they cannot use that ability because it's been blocked by the First King, and probably done so to help maintain the illusion of peace. But then you have this other race of people, the warriors, who hate the people within the walls, who want revenge for the atrocities they've committed. They want the founding titans' abilities to truly erase that race of people because they don't see themselves as safe. They don't see themselves at peace unless the threat within the walls is permanently erased and the founding titan is under their control, because it obviously is such an incredible and powerful ability that they want to make sure that it's weaponized for their people and not weaponized against them. I believe that's why Annie, Reiner, and Bertold were sent beyond the walls to gain that ability, because they wanted to weaponize it to erase everyone within the walls and to erase the race of people that exist within the walls, because they don't see themselves as being able to live a long and peaceful life with the threat of them hanging over them. So that is probably their justification for war, is that we are never at peace unless the threat is erased. Even though the people within the walls have had their memory wiped, so they don't actually know what's going on. They don't know what's happening. They're completely clueless, which is probably why we see that conflict between Annie, Reiner, and Bertold, because what they have been taught, that they were hated from birth, that they're hated for being who they are, that the people within the walls deserve what's coming to them, they find that that narrative is actually not true, and it's causing an internal conflict within them because they're beginning to realize that perhaps they've been brainwashed and manipulated into hating these people who are actually innocent because they're being punished for the sins of the past that they never committed, that they have no involvement in and are not aware of. Then you have the blood of the king, which is his descendants, which could be Maria, Rose, Cena, are his daughters, and then the descendants from them are everyone who is the blood of the king. Then you have the noble bloodlines, and then everyone else is the subjects of Ymir, in that they descend from Ymir and are linked to her, but are not noble or regal in blood, so therefore they're seen as like lesser, aka slave blood. So Ymir must have been a slave at some point. Uri knows a war is coming. Grisha knows a war is coming. Grisha is weaponizing the ability to A, gain revenge for the death of his wife, but also B, to protect the race of people within the walls, because there is a greater threat wanting to eradicate them. And this is all building up to a war that's going to take place between their people. That's where I'm at so far with the show. I could be massively off. Who knows at this point, because the show confuses me and I backtrack quite a lot, but that is where I'm currently at. And for now, I think that's all I have to say. To anyone that's still listening to this, you are the MVP. Thank you so, so much. I know it was a long yap session, but I really appreciate it when people sit through these theories. I know they're long, but it's super appreciated. And it really does mean the world to me that you enjoy hearing my thoughts and feelings on the show so far. If you enjoyed this react and the deep dives into theory crafting based on small bits of information that we have received so far in the show, please consider liking, subscribing, and leave a comment below. And until next time, bye.